Hi, I'm Rob, and this is GN Cloner, a geometry nodes-based cloner tool for Blender. The idea is pretty simple. It gives you a motion graphics style cloning system directly inside Blender without needing to build your own node trees or constantly dive into geometry nodes. You add a cloner object, pick a generator type, drop in your source objects, and then control the whole setup from the modifier panel. First, I'll quickly show you how to install it. So download the GN Cloner zip, go to Preferences, Add-ons, Install from Disk, find your GN Cloner zip, and that'll install it. Once it's enabled, you can add a cloner to your scene from the Add menu. So hit Shift A, go to GN Cloner, and choose GN Cloner. This adds a simple cloner object to the scene with the geometry node setup already applied. The first thing you want to do is choose your source objects. These are the objects that will be cloned, and you can put them inside the source objects collection. It imports a default instance, a simple cube, as standard, but you can put whatever objects you want to be cloned inside this source objects collection, and as many different objects as you want, and it will randomly distribute them through whichever distribution method that you've selected. You don't need to keep this collection active for them to appear in the cloner. If you want to keep your outliner tidy, you can turn that collection off. So now we can look at the generator modes. So select your GN Cloner object, and you will find the GN Cloner user interface. You've got 4 different generator modes: grid, radial, follow curve, and follow surface. We'll start with grid. The grid mode gives you a standard array style setup. You can control the count and the spacing. I hope you guys will forgive me. I'm not very versed in this. This is my first time doing this. This is my first plugin. Radial mode will distribute the clones along a circle. You've got control of the count, the number of instances. You've got ring count, so you can distribute the clones across like many rings. The radius. You've got the offset for those additional rings, how much distance there is between them. You've got the ring rotation offset, so your additional rings, you can adjust the rotation offset of them. You also have a height setting and turns, which allow you with a taper to create helix style shapes. You have offset control. If I increase the number of clones, I'm going to quickly skip ahead and add a little bit of random position so we can see it a little bit better. You can run the clones along the curve of the helix of the circle. I've also included an edge fade for that, so they will scale up and scale out at the start and end of that curve, and then you can run them along the offset. And then you also have rotation modes. So you can have them follow the standard local transform coordinates, you can have them follow the tangent of the curve, or you can have them face outward. Next up we have follow curve. So if I add a Bezier curve into the scene, let's scale it up a bit so you'll be able to see what's going on a little bit easier. You'll want to make sure that the scale has been applied, otherwise they won't clone along it properly. Let's make it a little bit more interesting. Okay, so if we go back to our GN Cloner object and we can select that Bezier curve, and you'll see the clones are distributed along whatever curve it is that you select. You have control over the count, so the number of clones. Let's add a little bit more. Let's add a few more. A little bit more random position, and then you have offset and an edge fade in the same way you do on the radial mode, so you can run your clones nicely along whichever curve it is that you've chosen. And you have 2 rotation modes. You can follow the local transform, or you can have them follow the tangent of your curve. Finally, we have follow surface. When you add a clone to the scene, it includes a follow surface collection. By default, it brings in a cube, but whatever object you place inside the follow surface collection, your clones will be distributed along the surface or the volume of that object. You can control the collection from here, so you could select a different collection if you want to add more cloners and you wanted a different surface for them. So if we just add, say, UV sphere, scale up a bit. If we duplicate this collection, we go to our other cloner, we go to follow surface 01, and in that, let's delete out the default. I think let's place that sphere. You will now see we're using the surface of that sphere. So you can change it to be, you're not limited to these default collections. You can add your own collections and have complex scenes as complex as you want. Let's get rid of that stuff quickly and go back to our cloner. So there are two modes. You have surface and volume. Obviously, as you can imagine, surface distributes them across the faces of your object. Volume distributes them within the volume of the object. You have two different modes within volume. You've got random, which you have a density control and a seed, and then you have grid. Let's turn off random position, which allows you to use grid spacing for filling the volume. And then surface, you've got poison disk, which gives you a slightly nicer distribution, and then you also have random, and then you have count for both. So let's go back to follow curve. And we'll look at next the transform panel. This transform panel and the effectors are all shared across the different generator modes. So the changes you make in these panels will affect the changes across the different modes. And we could have a look at adding. So you can adjust the scale, the position, and the rotation of your instances. You'll notice that the rotation doesn't actually work in follow curve mode when you have follow tangent on, but you can add random rotation into it. So let's get that position back so they're distributed a little bit more nicely. We can randomize the scale, and that can be done uniformly or non-uniformly. You can randomize the position in the same way, we've done that, and then you can randomize the rotation. And you can do that with follow tangent on. So if you want to add a little bit of randomness, but have them still face along the tangent of the curve, you can do that. Let's switch back to grid mode. And let's turn off these randomizations from the transform panel. Let's reduce this down a little bit. And now we can go into the effectors. So all of the effectors, you can affect the scale, the position, and rotation just within different modes, and they all have their own falloffs. So let's add an empty into the scene, and let's go back to our plane effector, and we can select the empty, and we have a gizmo that shows us our falloff, our outer and inner radius. The falloffs, you have the option of spherical and linear, and if you select follow scale, you'll see that the falloff will follow the scale of your control object. Let's demonstrate what we're talking about. So as we move the falloff around, you'll see that we're affecting the clones in the scene, and we have a linear falloff option as well, which gives you the X, Y, and Z linear axis. Let's move that down a little bit, and you'll see that we bring them in. Let's go back to our cloner, set that back to spherical. So that's the plane effector, and you can move their position, and you can adjust their rotation as well. So we could run that again, and there we go. Next up, we have the noise effector. Now the noise effector, unlike the plane and random effectors, doesn't require a fall off. Plane and random do require you to set a fall off with a control object. Noise will work right out of the box. So if we just let's add a little bit of variation on the noise. So you do have a fall-off control, and I'll get to that. You're able to control the position of the noise across the X, Y, and Z axes. You have access to 5 different noise patterns from 1D to 4D. You can control the scale of your noise pattern, and then you have detail, roughness, and distortion to modify that. You can set up a fall-off. Let's choose follow scale. So if you choose use fall-off, it will now only create our noise effect within the region of the fall-off. And similarly, you have spherical and linear and control of your inner and outer radius. And you can also select use control, and the position of your noise is now controlled by your control object as well. It's a little bit more obvious if we turn off use fall-off. Select our empty again. So you can see that we can control the position of our noise with our control object. So that's the noise effector, and then the random effector is very similar to the random controls that you have in the transform panel, only you're able to control it with a fall off. So you can choose where that randomness is going to propagate based on your fall off. So the important element of this is all of this stays accessible from the modifier panel. You don't need to open the geometry nodes editor unless you specifically want to inspect or modify the setup. And so that's GNCloner. Generators, transforms, randomization, surface scattering, curve following, radial and helix setups, fall-off based effectors, all wrapped up in a workflow that's meant to feel fast and direct. Thank you for watching. So I'd like to add, I do have planned updates for GNCloner. It is an active development. I'm working on expanding control and adding animation and real-world usability. The upcoming features include animation controls. So I want to add timing controls exposed in the UI. No need to dive into the nodes. You'll be able to select the parameters that you want to add animation to, and you'll have speed and timing controls for those. I'd like to add a selection index effector, so you can target specific clones using an index-based selection. I want to add attract and repel forces, so field-based effectors with more dynamic natural motion. If I can, I'd like to add collision-aware behavior, so that'll allow us to prevent instances from intersecting without requiring full simulations. I'll expand the noise system. I'd like to add more control, shaping the noise and using textures and maps to control the placement of the noise and its effect. And there are various generator modes I'd like to add, and I'll get to those as we go. So again, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed GNCloner. And I should also add, GNCloner is available to purchase for £29 on my website, store.latentsun.co.uk. I've tried to add a lot of control into this first release. It's my first ever plugin, so I'm very excited to release it for you all, and I hope it will be a useful tool in your arsenal. Thank you.